Stakeholder.
In gambling, an independent party with whom each of those who make a wager deposits the money or counters wager.
A person with an interest or concern in something, especially a business.
In emergency management, any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival and recovery of a given community. You.
Welcome to Stakeholder Prepping.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you are the stakeholder in your own survival. We are your hosts. My name is Chris.
And I'm AC. And here it is, folks. This is the one you have been waiting for. We are going to do the obligatory gun episode. The episode that every prepper Doomcast has to have to sit around and talk about guns for an hour. And I think we're going to probably split this up. This will be like the first of a few, but this is the obligatory gun episode that we should have done. We should have done episode 1.
Yay! It's finally here.
Yep.
We do want to give a fair shot to everything out there, so we are going to be breaking this into several parts. So today is kind of part 1, and I think we're going to focus on handguns. So we will do rifles, shotguns, specialties in different episodes, things like that. But I think for today, we're going to just focus on handguns.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing before we really jump into this one, we don't do a lot of disclaimers. I guess we're not big enough to get sued yet, but just remember that this is for educational purposes only. So be mindful of your local laws and ordinances regarding firearms of any kind. We are not giving any kind of advice here. We aren't FFLs. This is just this is for fun.
Could not have said it better myself. And this podcast, just like a firearm, is just another tool in your collection for you to use to meet your needs and function better. Firearms are tools, just like a hammer or measuring tape or a vehicle, anything like that. Firearms are just cordless hole punchers.
That's true.
I do have plenty of experience with firearms. I was on a sniper team in the Army. I do shoot competitively and recreationally, so I do know what I'm doing when it comes to firearm safety and use and ballistics and terminal ballistics and everything like that, as well as I was the general manager for a brick and mortar gun store for a long time, and I did work with one of the largest online retailers of gun parts, so I know a little about a lot of different guns, if you want to put it that way.
Sure. Yeah. And, me too. I definitely, I think I know just enough to be enough to be dangerous, when it comes to guns. I've done quite a bit of training, some, training at the range, obviously, all the concealed classes and things like that. And, if anybody ever has a chance, I couldn't recommend like Frank Proctor enough. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Chris, but he is so I've done a Frank Proctor course once, and that was just absolutely amazing. That really took, just thinking about things I didn't think about before, like just how to look at your sight picture and, shooting while moving and things like that. So I have done quite a bit of training, both sort of on the amateur side and with a couple of people that know what they're talking about. So, I'm definitely not a professional though. And guns can be dangerous, but really only under certain circumstances, right? I mean, I've got plenty of guns on the wall behind me that are not dangerous. They're not in a dangerous status right now because they're not loaded. The trigger can't be pulled. They're attached to the wall. They're locked up. So yes, take this with a grain of salt, but we're going to run down handguns in this episode. And that brings up a very good point because, there are a general set of instructions for handling any firearm, not just a handgun, but there are rules.
Are you talking about the 4 rules of firearm safety?
I absolutely am. And I'm guessing you probably know them all by heart.
I better know them with how many thousands of hours I've spent on the range. I better, but let's see if I can recall. Number 1, always treat every firearm as if it is loaded, even if someone tells you it isn't. Someone hands you a gun or you pick one up out of your safe or out from under the bed. Always be sure that you are the one checking and verifying that there's nothing in the chamber and no possible way for something to get in there, aka drop the magazine and lock the slide back to open and verify that there is no round in there. If someone tells you it's loaded, do a press check and make sure that you see brass before assuming it will go bang when your booger hook hits the trigger.
That's right. Keep your booger hook off the bang button.
Yes. Yes. Old Army habit. Nothing keeps the original aim. Fingers are booger hooks. Triggers are bang switches. Knees weak. Arms are heavy. Vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti.
Okay, yeah. So I think that it's time to stop before you go full blown Eminem mode because I don't think we can afford to pay him royalties. But
No.
but yes. So you have number one correct. Always treat every firearm as if it is loaded and ready to shoot when you touch the trigger. What's number two?
Number 2 is the one that always gets to me in movies and TV shows. Always keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction, not towards yourself or others. Keep the thing pointed downrange and away from your buddy's dome. And this bugs me so much because when you watch movies or TV that's supposed to be, high speed tactical units, like 90% of the time you can catch someone in the scene flagging their co-star, dragging the muzzle line of fire right through their midsection. And all it takes is one slip during a high stress situation, and you don't have a buddy anymore. You have a body. So just think about the consequences for a second and ask yourself if you would appreciate the same if your positions were reversed.
That's a very good point. And it flows right into gun safety rule number 3, which is, keep your finger off the trigger until you are ready to shoot, or your booger hook off the bang button, whatever you want to call it. But that is how accidents happen, by not paying attention to the little things, cutting corners, and, be honest. Do you think the extra tenth of a second to bring your finger down to the trigger, is going to matter if you weren't ready to shoot in the first place? It doesn't matter.
1,000 times out of 100, no. There's no excuse for negligent discharge and hurting someone unintentionally just because you got excited and pulled the trigger early. And that really does lead into the 4th rule of gun safety, which is knowing your target. Be aware of what is in front of, behind, next to your target so you minimize the risk of injury or damage. And this is a tough one for a lot of police and military, especially when it comes to mout or urban tactics. You may not know what's behind that wall if you get around that goes completely through the target. You may not be able to see pipes embedded in the wall or the electrical line that's going to start your house on fire. So be aware of your target and what happens to be the terminal ballistics when that enters the equation. So 12 gauge buckshot, I know from personal experience, will go through a lot more than you realize.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, like you said, you never ever point the gun at something that you don't intend to kill or destroy. So, yes, you always need to be conscious of what may or may not be in the background, which really applies to any situation, not just firearms. Being aware of your surroundings is one of the key fundamental, preps, right? That's being prepared, is being aware of your surroundings, regardless what's going on around you. So, how do we want to move forward with this? Because I don't think we just want to list off a bunch of guns and call it good, right? What's the criteria? What do you want to do here, Chris?
Yeah, I don't think we want to do that. I think otherwise the whole episode is just going to turn into one long gun ad.
Mhm.
So, how about instead of that, we discuss our criteria for why each gun makes our list, and then we hit, what do you say, our top 3 handguns each?
I like that.
And then the final one will be kind of our absolute last ditch must have for each of us.
Okay, sure.
And,
Yep.
When we're looking at these categories, again, this is for educational purposes. So we'll banter back and forth a little bit on these, but every one of these categories is something that you should be taking into consideration when you're purchasing a firearm or carrying a firearm or anything like that.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I think that should work pretty well. So let's run down kind of the list of criteria, how you pick these, and then we can kind of each hit. I guess we'll hit our top 3, and I like Yeah, I think 3 is good. It's kind of funny when we were talking about this, like, "Oh, could I get away with only having 5 handguns? Gosh, I don't know. Well, could I, definitely there's not just 1, but yeah, we'll do that. We'll come up with the 3, and then we'll come up, yeah, with the one last ditch, kind of the must-have that kind of fits your criteria." So, what's number 1 for you criteria-wise?
I think we've got to talk about stopping power slash caliber to
Okay.
start out.
Yep.
Um, and really, there's a lot of debate over different calibers. If you look at it historically, the 45 ACP, automatic Colt pistol round that was used in World War II by the Americans and British units, that
2
is
world wars!
two world wars.
2 world wars!
It is a great round.
Mhm.
It is a high caliber stopping force that will put somebody down. The Germans and Allies used 9 millimeter Luger, which at the time had a little bit less power, but more rounds they were capable of throwing down range.
Mhm.
And when you look at the two ballistically, back in the day, back in World War II, they were very different. Nowadays, not so much. And you had the FBI that they decided to go with a 9 millimeter, and then they said that's not enough stopping power, so we're going to go to a 45. And that was too big for a lot of agents to effectively manage in the field. So then they said, well, we're going to go to a 10 millimeter, which a 10 millimeter bullet instead of 45 caliber. And that was too much power for a lot of agents. So then they
Yeah.
designed the 40 Smith and Wesson, which is basically a 10 millimeter, a little bit shorter than a 45, a little bit longer than a 9 millimeter, but effectively the same length as a 9 millimeter. So you get more stopping power out of the same cartridge length. And it was also nicknamed the 40 short and weak because the people that liked the 45 didn't like the 40 because it didn't have the same stopping power. With modern ballistics, modern powders, you can get some pretty insane muzzle velocities off of just about anything you fire.
Sure.
So your stopping power is not that big of a question when you get into 9 millimeter to 45 and everything in between.
And we're talking not just about the powder and things like that, but the actual bullet material now, right? I mean, the fact that we've got these crazy, like, hollow points and these things that just look like saw blades flying at you. I think that you can just get a lot more damage out of a 9 millimeter round that has technology in it versus your old school lead 45 caliber ball. So that's come a
Oh,
long way.
oh, for sure. I mean, if you look at like the G2 RIP, radically invasive projectile, no, it's rest in peace because when that thing comes out of the barrel, it's screaming fast and it's designed to break apart on impact, and you get sharp barbs that are going to
Yeah.
cut through some sort of artery. It's going to kill you. It's not. It's not going to go through you, but it will absolutely stop you. The issue there is I have seen a couple of instances where it took more than one round not to kill them, but to stop them because it is a lighter weight round, doesn't have the same inertial force on impact.
Sure. Yep. Yep. That's a good one. For me, I'd say, one of my biggest criteria is kind of the versatility. Because, I'm using firearms in sort of a different scenario often. And, you know, let's say if you only get 3 firearms in the whole world forever, then mine kind of has to be a multi-mission weapon. So the versatility is a big one for me, something that can be used, for self-defense, but also for small game, and something that everybody can handle, and something you can use when your hands are wet, and all those kinds of things. So versatility is a really big one for me.
And that makes sense. Are you talking about your interchangeability of ammo and magazines between different firearms?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really big one, and I am going to talk a little bit about chamber inserts. I've talked about these before in some of our other episodes, but chamber inserts are a really big one for me. That if you've only got one firearm, but if that one firearm has the ability to fire, two or three or four different calibers, well, that's an extremely versatile firearm.
And it also kind of reflects on if you do not have reloading equipment and materials at home, what are the odds that you're going to be able to find that wildcat caliber that you really like to run?
Right,
If you really, really love 454 Casull or
right,
45 Long Colt or something
hmm
either outdated or just wild,
right.
you're going to have a tough time feeding the weapon, and then it just becomes a paperweight at that point.
That's right. So it sounds like ammo availability is probably a big one for you.
I definitely have to keep it in consideration when I'm considering all this,
Yeah,
especially with the price of ammo and a lot of the times the availability, even when shit hasn't hit the fan yet.
right.
Um, I think that having something that you can reliably feed is going to make an impact on your purchase and your practice.
That's right. Something you can feed, something you can find. And yeah, you're right. I think there are a lot of people that just want a weird caliber, right? They're like, "No, I just want to fire 22 Hornet or something because I don't know. Yeah, you want a weird caliber or like, on the wall behind me, I've got it's a classic gun. It's a Colt model 1903 which is chambered in 38 long Colt. That's kind of a funny round to find. That's not a super easy one to find, and that's not like my daily carry or anything, but you know what I mean.
And can you imagine if all you ever fired was like 5.7 by 28?
Sure, yeah, if you only fired just one weird round, then if you're not paying, whatever you're getting a 9 millimeter for these days, but 8 or 9 or 10 cents a round, then you're probably not practicing a whole lot. If you've got your big Gucci gun that shoots 50-cent rounds out the end of the barrel, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at something like the Secret Service, they have MP7s. Those are expensive guns, but the ammo for them is stupid. It's like $1.20 a round
Right, but
to
they've got
fire that
tax dollars.
4.8. So ammo availability, I'm going to stick
Yep,
with, 9 millimeter, 40, 45, something that's
yep.
readily available for me to find.
I'm
Uh,
I'm I'm right there with you.
I think another one that oftentimes gets overlooked is accuracy.
Mhm.
And I'm not talking about the materials of the barrel or how many lands and grooves are in the barrel, what the spin rate or the twist rate
Twist
on the
rate,
barrel is.
yeah, all that.
I'm not talking about any of that. We're looking at barrel length and grip style.
Mhm.
And this is actually something quick exercise that you can do even if you're driving. So if you take your fist and just point it at arm's length with all four fingers closed and your thumb up. So you've got your stack of fingers. You just kind of point your fist out. That is your traditional 1911 grip angle. And you're going to
Mhm.
find that in almost every 1911 clone. SIG firearms, you're going to find that in your Brownings, you're going to find that in your Colts, things like that. If you do kind of a two finger punch and lay your thumb out flat and just forced your top two fingers out, like you're doing the Bruce Lee two finger punch,
Yep, sure.
that grip angle, what you feel there is your Luger grip angle. So
Oh, yeah, sure.
Glock, CZ, a lot of brands will either do a 1911 grip angle or a Luger grip angle. And one of those is going to be more comfortable for you. So when you're talking about accuracy, getting comfortable with the weapon as you are practicing is a big part of it. And I've seen guys that they'll spend thousands of hours with a Glock. And then as soon as you put a 1911 in their hand, because that grip angle is different, they can't shoot it. 1911 owners that try shooting Glocks, they always shoot high. Glock owners that shoot 1911s, they always shoot low, and it's because of that grip angle, and they're not used to it, so they're not as effective with the weapon. It does take practice.
Yeah, and something I'll add to that, along the lines of accuracy, is a lot of these concealed guns that you find are double action only. And so you've got this really long trigger pull, and it is really tough to be that accurate with just a long trigger pull. And I think the reason they have these double action only guns is so people, it's just nearly impossible to have a negligent discharge if you've got a 20-pound trigger pull. It's just really, really tough to do, you know? And so I think that's why they do that a lot. But I've got a little a Taurus. It's a 380 revolver, and it's tiny. It's kind of like my summer gun, you know. Like the thing is not accurate at all. It's double action only, but you can put it anywhere on your person. I'm not a big guy. You could never find that thing. But accuracy wise, no, it's not there. You're not going to shoot any. You're not going to hit anything without standing next to it. And I've got another. It's a Smith and Wesson Bodyguard 380. Same thing. It's a double action only gun. So it's got this insane long trigger pull. And a buddy of mine brought his kid over, and the kid's young. He's 11 or 12, and he's like, "Hey, I wanted to teach the kid how to shoot." And so I laid up some guns on the range, and we're going through it. And I'm like, I wanted him to get some smaller caliber work, so I don't have a lot of 380s. I was like, let's try this 380. And for his strength in his finger, he had to basically place his finger far enough through the trigger in order to pull the trigger that when he pulled it back, he dropped the mag. His finger would hit the mag release, his trigger finger, because he didn't have enough finger strength to pull that normally. And I thought that was really interesting watching that happen, just watching the user interface of that firearm, because I have a strong enough trigger pull. I wouldn't have thought that, but someone with a weaker trigger pull, he just had to put his finger all the way through the trigger guard in order to pull that. And so one, insanely inaccurate, but two, he's dropping the mag when he fires the gun.
I have seen in a couple of instances where somebody, when they put both hands on the gun at the range, they put their dominant finger over the trigger, and then they layer their non-dominant finger just to get enough force to pull the trigger back, and that's not what you want.
Right.
That's dangerous at that
Yeah,
point.
absolutely. Again, and those all come into the accuracy conversation like you were talking about. So accuracy is a big word. It's not just the, like you said, how your sub MOA barrel and all this kind of crap. No, it's literally how accurate are you going to be with that firearm based on ergonomics and based on things as simple as the trigger pull weight. That's a big one. And then I think lastly, maybe, the ease of use for me is a big one. Like that goes into the accuracy a little bit, but the ease of use and maintenance, like if this is the only gun you're going to have or the only firearms you are going to have, how easily can these be field stripped? Do they have wear items? I know my buddy's got a Wilson Combat 45, and it's like, it's a competition gun. It's awesome. But there are springs in that gun that are rated to, a couple hundred rounds. And that's just a known wear item. Sorry, you're going to have to replace them every few hundred rounds.
And along with that comes, can you effectively manipulate the firearm? If it's too big for your hands, it's not going to work. If you can't rack the slide effectively, it's a paperweight. And I know, talking about the Bodyguard 380, I know Smith and Wesson on their 2.0 series, they came out with the 380 EZ.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a super, super light recoil spring, so that if you have weaker hands like arthritis or just a small frame body or something like that, you can manipulate that slide and still protect yourself. The downside of that is when you fire, those recoil springs are coming back so fast, you get more recoil, more felt recoil out of it, because everything has a cost. And so it's a lightweight gun to begin with. Now you add in the light tension recoil springs, and you get a resulting rise in your muzzle every time you fire.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. So I think that's kind of the criteria Chris, is there anything else in there that's important to you when you're talking about your last three firearms on Earth?
Yes and no. Last three firearms on Earth, I think I've pretty well gone over it. Last three firearms on Mars, totally different ballgame. But I I do want to kind of discuss when you're going to a gun store. If you have never purchased a firearm before or have no idea what you're really getting into, I would highly, highly, highly recommend taking a class or going with a trusted friend to the range and trying some stuff out because
Absolutely. Go rent some guns and just go do that. That's yeah, it's so smart. You're right. Rather than just playing with one behind the counter and buying it.
it's worth the cost to try it out. A big part of that is understanding the recoil. And what I recommend is don't carry a firearm or don't even add it to your list if you cannot get a follow on shot immediately.
Sure. Yeah, if you get too much muzzle rise or muzzle jump that you can't get a second shot downrange on target quickly.
We probably need to be looking at a different caliber or even a different gun or lighter springs or heavier springs or something like that to be able to effectively put 2, 3, 4, 5 shots on target.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid growing up, there was a guy who he had robbed a couple of banks with a hypodermic needle that he said was loaded with HIV, and the police chase ended in my neighbor's yard. He was high on PCP, and I watched him take like 15 rounds of 9mm straight to the chest, and he was dead but didn't know it yet.
Oh my gosh.
So if you don't have the capacity to get that follow-on shot, you're potentially in trouble.
Sure.
Do you know what the recommended distance for firearms engagement under the FBI is?
Yeah, I think it's 20 feet. I think it's less than 20 feet, isn't it?
21.
21 feet, right. Yep.
So you have to be able to clear your holster and get shots on target by the time that somebody can close 21 feet to you.
Yep.
That happens fast.
Yep.
So if you can't get 2 shots on target in 21 feet at a target that's moving at you, we might want to be looking at a different caliber for you.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and that's something that you can play around with at the range. You can step off that 21 feet and see how quickly you can get rounds on target. So, all right, well, let's go through the list then. You want to start first? What's your first one?
This is going to sound really weird to some people, but handguns only. One of my top 3 survival handguns would be a Ruger 2245 Mark IV.
Okay, what is
It's
that?
a 22 caliber pistol. And the reason I like it is for small game takedown. It is not going to be defensive. It is going to be for small game like rabbits, squirrels, maybe a coyote, maybe some sort of smaller predator. But it's very, very easy to find ammo for in most cases.
And when you say 22, this is a 22 long rifle, right? 22
It is.
LR. Okay.
22 LR.
Mhm.
It's nothing exotic like 22 Wildcat or
Yep.
22 Calibri or anything like that. I do like the 22 LR. I do small game hunt with it. It is effective. I do not have a suppressor on mine. I have a compensator that's absolutely unnecessary, but I like having it. But it's super, super light recoil. It weighs almost nothing. And it's easy to take down. It's easy to maintain. It's easy to reassemble. The Mark IIIs and before that, they had some difficulty getting everything back together. The Mark IV, they solved a lot of those problems. But it's comfortable.
Mhm.
And it's accurate. I can put rounds through the end of a 12 gauge shotgun shell at about 25 feet.
Wow, that's impressive for a
So
22. Yeah, that's crazy.
it's got plenty of capability for what I need it to, and I can feed it. I can go practice it, and I can practice fundamentals at less cost than dumping 9mm.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good one. And yeah, I think with 22s, I've just had bad luck with with them cycling all the time, and I think a lot of that is just the ammo. You can get good 22 ammo and you can get bad 22 ammo, and finding good quality 22 ammo that's going to cycle, because it just doesn't have as much blowback to move a slide around, right?
Correct. And yeah, if you're looking at good quality 22 ammo, I personally like Remington Thunderbolt and
Mm-hmm.
CCI mini mags. Um, you also have to kind of be aware of how many rounds you've put through it since you last cleaned it or oiled it, because that carbon, whenever you fire a firearm, regardless of caliber, unless it's something totally strange like the caseless ammunition, you have the powder inside, and as that burns, it produces gas that pushes the round down the barrel, and that's the actual hole punchy part. And that's where you get the flash, is the unspent carbon as it's exiting the barrel is still catching on fire from the heat and the pressure, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where you get the muzzle flash. Well, not all of that carbon will burn up. So you do get a little bit pushing back for the extraction process on any semi-automatic firearm. You also get it on revolvers. There's just not enough heat and time to burn all of the carbon. So it does tend to stick to metal surfaces, especially at high temperatures.
Sure.
And with 22 in particular, they say it runs dirty.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that it burns any cleaner or any dirtier in most cases. It's that it doesn't have sufficient time under that temperature to completely burn. So you get a lot of carbon blowback, and it can cause your metal parts and your functioning parts to actually stick. So with a 22 of any kind, you kind of have to be aware of the last time you cleaned and oiled it.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're right. I have heard that like 22 is dirty, but yeah, you're making a good point about that. My first one, I've talked about this gun before, so I didn't talk about it a lot. But my first one is my daily carry gun is a CZ Rami, or a CZ 2075. It's a 9mm. It's a compact pistol, and it's got a 10 round mag that, the like your pinky is off the bottom of the base plate of the mag. It has a 14 round mag that fits perfectly. Like, it fits my hand perfectly. So it's still a double stack mag, but it is a compact pistol. And the thing I really like the most about it is that it has all of the features of a full size pistol, meaning that it's a single action and a double action. You can carry it half cocked if you want, so that first trigger pull is not quite that big long double action. You can carry it cocked and locked, so you've got the hammer all the way back with the safety on. It has a ambidextrous safety. It's got a fully adjustable rear sight. And the thing I really like about that is, when you're training with that firearm, it's almost the same as training with a full-size firearm, because it has all those same features as, like, say, a SIG 226. Like, it has all those same features. And then, it fits my hand naturally, so I like that. But I really like that as a small, as a concealed firearm. The only thing I really did is, we talked about this before, on that rear sight, that blade sight. I rounded off the blade sight a little bit with a Dremel, because I was getting those little mouse bites in all my shirts. So I did take that down a little bit. And then recently, I bet you could find like a tritium front sight for this one, because it does have a removable blade sight in the front. But what I did is, I just took one of those. I think Birchwood Casey makes them, like the fluorescent pens, and made that little front sight a really nice green dot.
Okay.
You know,
Just something to give you a little bit more contrast against the background and
exactly, a
pick
little
up
more
on.
little more contrast and lower light, just to pick it up. But yeah, that's the one. So that's my number one. And that's kind of my daily carry gun. And it's funny that that's, I've actually used that once. We were hiking, and a rattlesnake tried to get fresh with my dog in the Oregon outback, Western Rattler. And it was not the right firearm for the mission. It just happened to be the one that I had on me, because that's the one I have on me all the time. So if you've ever tried to shoot like a snake at 20 or 25 feet with a 9mm. Like, I'm a decent shot, but they're tiny. So, and the thing is, after they die, they still move a lot. So you just don't know. So I actually did I did a mag dump on this thing and actually changed out magazines and went back at him. I don't know how many times I shot him. I probably got him out of those maybe 10 or 15 rounds downrange. I probably hit that snake 5 or 6 times, I bet, but I got him, and he didn't get the dog, but I got some good photos of it.
So I guess the question is, did you make rattlesnake giblets, like fried
No,
rattlesnake or anything like that?
no, he was just ventilated. He was just way too torn apart to do anything with. And I didn't take the rattler, which is something in retrospect that would have been cool to do. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of killing stuff unnecessarily, but that was one of those situations where I was like, oh man, it's this animal is angry and is coming after the dog, and yeah, so that gun I actually did use to protect myself or others.
I would say that's a justified use.
I think it's
for sure.
justified. Yeah, it's justified. So
I,
anyway,
just justifying the vet bill for
I
a
know,
rattlesnake
right?
bite.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I don't think they have a lot of. I mean, I think anti venom is not a very popular thing to have. So anyway, I'm glad. Yeah, nobody got bit. But what's your number two?
So for this one, I'm going to go full size.
Okay.
I really like my Sig Sauer P226 Elite. It is a Scorpion edition, so it's the flat dark earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I do keep a Streamlight TLR1 on the front of it, which is a tactical light that's very, very bright. And one of the reasons I like it is an ambidextrous tactical light, so I can hit it with either my offhand thumb or my trigger finger.
Oh yeah.
For momentary on or permanent on. But I really like how it fits in my hand for a full-size gun. It does have the ambidextrous safety. It is the double action, single action with a half cock option. And one of the things I do really like about it is the fact that it has a decocker. So
yeah, absolutely.
I can chamber a round, and I know the round is in there, and the hammer is back. And rather than put my thumb on the hammer, squeeze the trigger, and control that descent down, because
Mm-hmm.
if your hands are wet, it could always slip, something like that.
Yep.
Rather than do that, I can just use my thumb, hit that decocker, and it doesn't require the trigger to be activated in order to release the hammer down into a non-fired double action position. And for those who are confused on what double action, single action is, real quick rundown. Double action is when you squeeze the trigger, it is forcing the hammer back and cocking the hammer and then immediately releasing it. And on a semi-automatic handgun, on a revolver, it's going to be a little different because you have to control that manually. You have to pull the hammer back, then release it if you want the single action. But on a pistol, a semi-automatic handgun, every time you fire, that hammer returns to a cocked position. So now it becomes single action. Every time you squeeze the trigger, all you're doing is releasing the hammer to drop forward. So you don't have to go through that extra step of cocking it on every trigger pull. There are what are called DAO or SAO, which is single action only or double action only. I really like DASA, which is double action, single action for this reason, because I have the option to carry in either position. And most revolvers are going to be either single action only or DASA. But I really like that 226. It fits my hand well. I just run the straight Trijicon tritium sights. I don't have a optic on it or anything like that. And I don't know, do you normally run optics on yours? What's your number two?
No, yeah. So yeah, good segue, because yeah, my number two is literally like your number two's cousin. So this is funny. I have it's a Sig 229, but there's a story behind this. Is funny. I have a friend who is a Navy SEAL, and we were talking about full size handguns, and I was like, hey, I need to get like a good quality full size handgun. I wanted one that was a double action and single action like you're talking about. And I had never owned a SIG before. And I said, what are the Navy SEALs? Because you guys use like these Wilson Combat Navy SEAL Edition or these, super fancy, Christensen 1911s with Damascus steel slides. He goes, I don't know where people get that shit. He's like, I carry a SIG 226. He's like, that's the gun I carry as a Navy SEAL, is a SIG 226. And so he had hooked me up with a discount. He knew some guys at SIG. And I'd actually wanted the 229 Dark Elite model, which is like the fancy one. And after 6 months or so of waiting for that thing, I think because I was getting a deal, it wasn't just because they were backlogged, but one of the guys called me, goes, hey, listen, I don't have that Dark Elite, but I have this Scorpion Edition one, like you're talking about, which is the Elite with the flat dark earth. And I said, okay, I'll take that one. And so that is my kind of go-to full-size pistol, is a SIG 229, but it is kind of Gucci'd out. Yeah, I've got, for the light, I've got the Surefire, it's the X400 Ultra, so that is the light and laser combo, and you can choose whether when you push the button, either the light or the laser or both come on. And what I have is this... you buy a custom, not a custom, but it's specific to the pistol, a battery door that has a touchpad that goes to below the trigger. So you basically, when you squeeze the handle, it lights the light or the laser or both. And then on that pistol, I do actually run an optic. I have a Trijicon RMR, and this is actually funny. I don't run optics on any guns I own. I bought a Trijicon ACOG for a rifle of mine, and it was like the combo kit. Like it came with the RMR on top, so it was like the ACOG, like a 6X ACOG that came with the RMR. And so,
Okay, so you got the free RMR.
basically, yeah, I mean, it wasn't free, but it was a combo kit thing, and I didn't need it. I got a deal on that optic that came with that Trijicon RMR, which is their open eye, little reflex sight. It was on top of the Trijicon ACOG. And so I just took it off of there, and for just a few bucks, I bought that base plate that attaches to the SIG that replaces that rear sight. So I don't normally run an optic. They take a lot of getting used to. You kind of end up drawing the pistol a little different with an optic, where it's very easy to not find that optic. I think when I let people shoot it for the first time, it's very hard for them to find that dot. So when you draw, you end up drawing that very close to your face and then bringing your arms out in a lot more mechanical motion there, because you pick the optic up first as you go to get on target. And so it's just a little bit different the first time you start shooting with an optic, and I'm sure you've been through that yourself.
Yeah, and I tend to not run optics unless it's my competition guns.
Mhm.
I'm very rough on stuff, so I don't need the optic on. I carry my SIG P365 XL.
Yep.
It does not have an optic on it because that's my concealed carry. I don't need the optic jamming me in the belly button
Sure.
every time I put my pants on. So
Yep.
I usually focus on iron sights and having something that I can pick up easily, but I do have a couple of competition guns that do have optics, and it is a very different shooting style that you have to get used to and have to practice with. If you throw an optic, even if it's zeroed on there and it's your first time, don't be discouraged if you don't hit the target. Don't make your first time in a
Yeah.
threatening situation, but
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point too. And I on that, I will say, in sort of the low light situations, like a dusk and dawn type situation, the optic is nice. It does come in handy. Trijicon, I mean, obviously Trijicon's quality, so this one, it's auto dimming, like it's there's no on off switch, which is one thing that I do think is a little cheesy when I see a lot of these pistols that, they've got a deal where this pistol will come with an optic on it, and you have to turn the optic on in order to shoot the gun. I have a huge issue with that. Like, you got to push the power button. So that's an
I
issue.
completely agree there.
with the Trigicon, it's always on. It lasts. I don't know what LED technology is in there, but that thing that it obviously when it's dark, it dims down, and so there's a little cover you can put over it that would make it dim all the time. But yeah, uh, I don't know how long it's been over a year since I've changed the battery, and it's on 24/7. So that's my one thing about optics is you got to be prepared for it not to work sometime. Whenever your gun takes batteries, batteries can die. Um, but that's kind of my Gucci go-to full size pistol. It's super fun at the range. I've got the I think Mech Gar, is that the company they make like a +3 mag? So
Yeah, Metgar does a lot of magazine attachments where
yeah.
it's a different base plate that you
Yep.
use your standard magazine and then just clip on the extra base plate and it gives you a couple extra rounds.
Yep, never had a malfunction out of that. So anyway, yeah, really, really quality gun. Dig the SIGs. It's the only SIG I own. That's just the one. It was just because, yeah, my buddy was kind of coaching me on what gun to go get, and that was the one. I will say that I have a holster from Off the Grid Concepts that I had them build for this, and I didn't have to send the pistol in. So this thing has a threaded barrel. It's got an optic. It's got this kind of you know, kind of a different light on it. That light isn't like it's a bit exotic, that X400. It's a very large light with the laser, and I didn't have to send any of that stuff in. He had all of those molds in stock. So I just said, hey, I got a SIG 229 threaded barrel. I've got an optic. I need the optic cut out. I want a full sweat guard. I want it to, it's got the X400 light with the laser attachment. And I didn't have to send him the gun. He had all that stuff in stock to build that holster for me.
And did you get the stakeholder prepping discount?
I didn't. This is before us, man. It sucks. No, I did not. I did recently purchase another uh another holster from him for an HKVP9, and I haven't got it yet. So I did use our code. I believe, is it prepping? It's our code is prepping. It's very easy, isn't it?
Yes.
It's just prepping. So yeah, Off the Grid Concept. So it's otghex.com. Obviously we got links on our website, but use our code prepping. You get 15% off of these custom holsters. And gosh, he just does a great job. And you'd enjoy this. So the cool thing about this holster that I got is what he does, because the light is the widest part. So that's where a lot of the retention happens on this pistol is on the holster, is in the light. So all of his holsters that have a light, he sells them in what's called a light no light option, meaning that there's a little bolt that it comes with. That's the retention bolt. So if you were to take the light off of this pistol, normally it wouldn't work in a holster. It would flop around in the holster because there's not enough retention. So he sells this little, I think it's an extra $5 or $10 for the light, no light option in his holsters. So you could have the same holster whether or not you wanted to run the light on your gun, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you don't get the floppiness of, oh, there's no retention anymore.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you drop the light, you have this little retention lug that you just install in the holster, and you can run that exact same holster. So all of your same mechanics are the same. Everything's identical, except you don't have the light on it. You can run it without the light and just run his light, no light option. So I really like that about Off the Grid Concepts.
Fantastic. So I do want to jump into our number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Before I do, I kind of want to touch on shooting stances a little bit because this just came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
When you shoot, first off, are you right or left-handed?
I'm right-handed, yeah.
Okay, I'm right-handed as well.
Mm-hmm.
But when you shoot, do you lock both elbows out and keep the firearm centered on you? Do you lean over to one side or the other? Do you keep your elbows bent?
The stance I've always learned is that traditional athletic stance, knees slightly bent, elbows slightly bent type thing, not like the, I guess the FBI stance is sort of the off to one side and you can move a lot better in that stance. But no, I've always learned the sort of traditional 2-point athletic stance where, toes pointed forward, your knees shoulder width apart, slightly bent, elbows slightly bent, that kind of thing. I've never really shot using the FBI stance where you're sort of canted off to one side.
And I don't know the next time you're going to get a chance to go to the range and try this out, but
Hmm.
the way that I have found, and this is me personally, this is for some of our audience, they're going to think I'm just fucking high,
Sure.
which I promise I'm not. But the way that I have found to be more effective, especially in competition, is I do shoot offset isosceles, which means I have that athletic stance. My shoulders are even with my heels, knees slightly bent, slightly hunched over at the hips, back straight, pushed out with my elbows as far out as I can go. But I have my left elbow is completely locked. My right elbow is loose. My
Okay.
right hand, my actual firing hand, is not gripping the gun. I have enough control with the overlay on my left hand that's where I'm getting all the tension from. So I can completely relax my shooting hand and my shooting finger and shooting arm and compensate for the recoil a lot faster and get on target a lot quicker for that second, third follow on shot because I'm not firing with any of my control surfaces, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, no, it sounds like that is probably really good for a certain size of firearm and maybe not great for a smaller size of firearm. Is that right?
I've done that with 357 Desert Eagles. I've done that with my 22s. I've done that with Glock 380s. And I get a lot of positive results out of it, regardless of the size of firearm.
Wow.
A lot of that is practice, though, and it
Sure,
is
of course.
different to get used to
Of
because
course.
you're relaxing your firing arm, which sounds and feels a little weird to get used to.
Yeah, that does sound sort of counterintuitive. So, all right, so what's your last one? You get one gun for the rest of your life ever. You're going to eat the same sandwich for the rest of your life. What is that gun?
Ooh, um, I'm gonna have to go with the Glock 19 Gen 4.
Okay.
Specifically, I have an Inforce tactical light, and I do have the upgraded True Dot tritium sights on it.
Mhm.
But the fact that the Glock 19 can take the magazines for a 19, a 17, it can take the 33 round sticks, it can take the 50 round drums. Um, I really like the fact that it is adaptable, and I have tons of those magazines everywhere.
Versatility.
I love the 33 round giggle sticks. They're awesome. And the 19 magazines will fit in a Glock 26. Now the Glock 19 is a 9 millimeter. Um, Bonus fact: if you are really interested in it, and you get either a Glock 19 or a Glock 23, which is the same frame but in 40 cal versus 9 millimeter, you can change out the barrel in the magazine and have one gun, or you can just buy the second barrel and then double your ammo options.
Oh, yeah, nice. Now, different magazine?
It is a different magazine because the 40 is a little bit wider. So if you try
Uh-huh.
to shove 40 caliber into a 9 millimeter, you're going to have some hangups.
Okay.
If you try to shove 9 millimeter into a 40, it'll function for the first couple of 3 rounds. And then you get rounds that just kind of, because they're loose in the magazine, they're going to tumble. So it
So this
doesn't
would be like a
feed.
single shot pistol if you had to swap barrels out, is what you're saying.
If all you're swapping is the barrel, you're going to have some more malfunctions with it. If you swap out the barrel and the magazine, you're going
Got
to
it.
have plenty of
Got
rounds
it.
before you have
Okay.
to do
Oh, so
anything with it.
the magazine, the 40 magazine will fit in the 9 millimeter?
Exact same
Oh, got
frame.
it. Okay. That's
Yep.
crazy.
So
Oh.
I really like the 19, specifically the Gen 4.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people are like, no, Gen 5 is way better. Gen 3 is way better. Gen 3 has a smaller magazine release, which I'm not a huge fan of. Gen 5, they took out the finger grooves, which they fit my hand very well for the 19 Gen 4. It's the same barrel length between all three gens, Gen 1 through 5. Um, It's the same barrel length across all Glocks, but they did some things to the frame. They did some things to the pins that hold it together. But in general, Glock is going to be my go-to. They're extremely easy to maintain. They are very reliable. They're balanced well. They're accurate, and I can field strip it in no time flat.
With your eyes closed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's four major components that come out when you field strip it, and then you have to figure out what's going on with the slide if it's not functioning. But I think ammo availability, adaptability, the magazines, the weight of it, the accuracy, ease of use, all of it kind of culminates for me in the Glock 19 Gen 4.
That's the one. Yeah, that's and so Glock 19 versus a 17, which is just the slightly larger frame. Why did you go 19 instead of 17?
The 17 has a slightly larger frame because it's considered a full-size pistol. The
Mm-hmm.
19 is a compact. The magazine lockup on both is in the exact same spot, but because the grip on the 17 is a little bit longer, the 19 magazines can't lock up. They don't have enough distance to travel. But conversely, the 17 length magazines will lock up with the 19 magazine
Oh,
release.
okay. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah. So I didn't realize that. I didn't realize 19 wasn't really considered like a full size pistol, but that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good one. And something else, if we're talking about full on Teotihuacan, magazines for that are going to be maybe the most common magazine on planet Earth. If you think about, dude, that's every single cop I know is carrying at least 3 or 4 of those.
I would say I've got a pretty decent shot of grabbing one off of a body if
Yeah, no,
necessary.
cop zombie or something. Yeah, so there's a lot of them, and if you happen upon other firearms, yeah, like you said, that magazine will fit a number of carbines and kind of the MP5 type clones. Little 9 millimeters. Like I've got a Freedom, I think it's called a PX or an FX9 that takes that exact same magazine. Yeah, you've got. I mean, I probably have five firearms that take that exact same magazine across the spectrum of firearms. So yes, very very versatile. I like that. Um,
So what's your ultimate go-to? This
so
is
the,
the one that you're getting married to for
yeah,
forever.
this is it. This isn't. This is not the. This isn't my first choice, but it is my last choice. This is the one that if I had to have one, it would be that. And I'm going a completely different direction than you. Um, but I'm gonna say the Smith and Wesson Governor for those who aren't familiar.
Really?
Yeah, and I'll defend my position, but those who aren't familiar, the Smith and Wesson Governor is a revolver. It is a 6-shot revolver that is chambered in 410 shotgun. And I take a 410 shotgun revolver whenever I go backpacking, and this is something that I could use as sort of my farm slash you know property gun. Right now, I usually carry like a Smith and Wesson 686 revolver that has it's 357 Magnum with snake shot in it, because most likely what I'm going to encounter is some kind of varmint or snake or something like that. I can do that with this gun as well, but I could also literally load it for bear. And so what I like about these 410 revolvers, and there's two really, there's the Governor and then there is the Taurus Judge, and I'll give the Taurus Judge its due. In fact, that was the first one I bought. It didn't make it because it's a 5-shot revolver instead of a 6-shot revolver. Really, the only thing I like about the Taurus is their grip. They call it their ribber grip, and dude, it doesn't matter what's going on. You could soak your hands in olive oil and pick that thing up, and you're gonna have a grip on it. So I like that about the Taurus, but that's about all I like about the Taurus.
Okay.
So the Smith and Wesson Governor 6-shot revolver, very versatile firearm. The one I bought came factory with the laser, so the laser is in the grip, so it's kind of by your right index fingers where the laser is there.
Is that the Crimson Trace package?
I think it is the Crimson Trace package. Like the grip itself says it's embossed Smith and Wesson, but it is the Crimson Trace package. That's right. So it's got like a grooved rear sight with a tritium front blade sight. But here's what I like. This is the versatility of it. Is most people know this that know firearms, but this is a 410 shotgun, so you can load this thing in order. So, for example, you could have the first couple as snake or bird shot if you think that's what you're most likely to encounter, or um, the fact that it has a very wide spread, and then you could load the next one with a 410 buckshot. I have mine loaded. It's basically three 410 caliber balls, like three 340 caliber balls in one bullet. Or you could load 45 long colt, and you have a lot of options when it comes to 45 long colt. You have some really kind of sexy hollow points and things like that you could load in 45 long colt. So you could load this thing in such a way, depending on what you're more likely to encounter. Also, the governor specifically comes with these moon clips that allow you to fire 45 ACP out of it. So extremely versatile
Oh,
firearm.
nice.
Comes from the factory with these moon clips, and it's not this. So a lot of these pistols like this will have a single moon clip. So you're kind of committed. You're like, okay, I'm putting six 45 long or 45 ACPs in here. This one, it doesn't. Each moon clip is for 2 rounds. So you could have 2 45 ACPs and 2 45 long colts and a 410 shotgun, all loaded in the order in which you want them. So very versatile firearm. And I said I was going to talk a little bit about chamber inserts as well. I have a chamber insert that is a 45 long colt, so it fits in here, that takes 22 long rifle. Now, not accurate at all, right? You've got about a 1/4 inch of rifling maybe on this thing, but you could put a 22 long rifle with a chamber insert in this firearm. And I've got some 22 that's the little mini snake shot. So if you're shooting extremely small game or murder hornets, maybe that would be the perfect round for it. But yeah, so anyway, it's the versatility that I'm looking for in the only firearm. Now, as a self-defense firearm, this is it's you can pull the hammer back, and so it is like a double action. But like you explained, Chris, when you fire that, then you are either going to have an extremely long trigger pull, or you're going to have to reset the hammer. So it is semi-automatic, but every time you've got a pretty long trigger pull. So not the most ideal self-defense weapon, but being able to load it with fucking shotgun shells, like, you don't really need to be on target there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
that's a very good point.
yeah. So, it's got a great spread on it. So yeah, that's my one. Like I said, I give the shout out to the Taurus Judge, which is a very similar pistol, and it was also in Max Payne, which is kind of cool with Mark Wahlberg. That's the cool pistol he had. He had 2 of those. But yeah, Smith and Wesson Governor would be my last only firearm ever, simply because of the versatility. And revolvers, man, they're hard to ever fail. Those things do kind of go forever. I personally I have a 120-year-old revolver that I did shoot once. So it does. I mean, they do seem to last forever.
If you're going to make it through the apocalypse, you may as well make it through with all the stuff you started with. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's
So
no planned obsolescence on that one.
There's no planned obsolescence on that one. So that's my last one. I went a completely different direction than you, but I kind of got there because of the same reason. I got there because of the versatility of that firearm. And for me personally, what I'm doing with it is, this isn't a concealed carry every day. And in my SHTF fantasy, ideally I'm not dealing with people every day. It's more along the lines of, I need something that I could actually hunt game with if I had to, and being able to load that with a plethora of different 410 shotgun rounds. That's kind of why I went with that pistol.
I like it. And the fact that you can get an off the grid holster for any one of them, or
Any
all
of
of them
these.
combined, that makes a big difference too.
If we got you guys thinking about pistols now and pulling that pistol out and going to the range and thinking about buying a new pistol, if you need a holster, please check out Off the Grid Concepts. I could not say enough good things about that company. And the fact that they gave our listeners specifically 15% off is insane. It's unheard of. Like, I mean, there's just nowhere you can go. 10% is kind of like, I think, your sort of run of the mill discount, right? Especially when you have programs like this that I think a lot of people will throw a 10% discount at you, but a 15% discount is crazy. And like I said, I had to use it myself because I didn't believe it.
And I am very curious what our audience is going to make of this obligatory gun episode part 1. So
Yeah,
drop us a comment
please.
on Spotify or Facebook, or send us an email. Go to our website, stakeholderprepping.com. You can get a hold of us any number of ways, but I'm very curious what you guys think about our
Yeah.
end of the world guns.
We came, and we came at this. Remember early on, we said we weren't really going to do a lot of gun stuff because there's if you want to hear somebody drone on about guns forever, there's a billion other podcasts you can listen to. So we really weren't going to do this every episode. It's not the doom and gloom. It's not the end of the world stuff every episode. But firearms are, like you said, Chris, a tool, and they are a tool for preparedness. And it would not be fair to the preparedness community if we didn't address them, from time to time. So I am interested to hear from people if they want to hear more guns, less guns. If they've got other opinions on firearms, we're happy to talk about them. So yeah, I would love to hear from our listeners if they would like to hear more obligatory gun episodes here and there.
Bring it on. We won't shy away from it. Promise.
Right.
But I think that's about going to wrap this one up until the next phase of our little adventure here. Remember that you are your own stakeholder.